William Tolmie, the Highland tacksman's son who became a wealthy pastoralist and businessman in Otago.
When we think of Highland immigration, we tend to picture those impoverished people pushed off their land in favour of sheep as part of the infamous Highland clearances. But William Tolmie's family weren't like that. They were from the tacksman class. Now, the tacksmen were the next social rung down from the clan chieftain in Highland society. Tacksmen organised clan events on behalf of the chief, and they tended to live in much more comfortable circumstances than ordinary clan members. William was born in 1833 here at Uganish House on the shores of Loch Dunvegan, and almost opposite Dunvegan Castle, which is the seat of the chief of Clan MacLeod. Now, the Tolmies were a set of Clan MacLeod, which is kind of like saying they were a hapu of a Maori iwi. And William's forebears on both sides of the family had served the clan chieftains in key roles, including his own father, John Tolmie, who cleared clans members off his land on Skye during the 1830s when William was a boy.
But when John Tolmie died in 1844, his 9 children were all too young to take over his tack or landholding, and it was surrendered.
The family then went to live in Talisker House in Mingonish with their mother's brother, Hugh McGaskill. Now, he was one of the leading men on Skye, farming large numbers of sheep on his extensive land holdings. Unfortunately, the potato famine which struck Skye in 1848 hit this area hard, and many crofters decided to emigrate. So too did William Tolmie. He decided to go to Australia following an older brother, his passage no doubt paid for by his uncle. He was just 15 at the time.
He arrived in Melbourne's Port Phillip in January 1849 on the Maitland. Those first few years in Australia were likely spent working on farms, but when gold was discovered in Victoria, the sudden surge in wealth led to a big expansion in Melbourne's commercial sector. William had received training in banking from one of his uncles on Skye, and at the age of 20, he joined the Union Bank of Australia. The Tolmies also had connections from Skye living in Tasmania, and William made several visits there in the mid-1850s. The big attraction was probably actually a young woman, Sabella McKinnon, whose mother was from Skye. William married Sabella at Launceston in February 1858. The following year, he was headhunted by the Colonial Bank of Australasia to manage its branch in Geelong.
William's colonial career really took off, however, when he and his brother crossed the Tasman to Otago in 1864.
Relations of his wife had already made the move, and numerous close acquaintances from Melbourne were also drawn to the booming Otago economy, including William Larnock and James Rattray. William Tolmie actually went into business with Rattray as partners in an Otago branch of Dalgety Rattray and Company, a stock and station agency.
But his real interest lay in sheep farming itself, and within months of arrival, William had secured his first pastoral lease. Over the succeeding years, he bought or leased huge tracts of land, especially here at Wairuna and all along the South Otago hills, where he developed extensive flocks of high-quality merino sheep. Now, this hill behind me is now known as Wairuna, but in many 19th century maps, it's actually called Tolmie's Peak.
In fact, his wool was often assessed as among the best produced in the colony, and he later diversified into long wool breeds like Leicester's, Lincoln's and Romney Marsh on his properties at Clinton and Waipahi.
Now, with all these commercial and farming interests, as well as family life with Sabella and their 3 children, you'd wonder how William had time for much else. But he was actually heavily involved in social and political affairs as well.
One of his most significant contributions to New Zealand history, in fact, was his suggestion while a member of the Otago Chamber of Commerce that Cantonese gold prospectors in Victoria should be invited over to Otago to remedy a sudden shortage of labour on the goldfields in 1865. Less positively, in the long term, he also bears some responsibility for the introduction of rabbits as a member of the Otago Acclimatisation Society in the 1870s. He was as well a leading member of the Otago Provincial Council and was elected to Parliament in 1872. In all these roles, William was part of a tight network of commercial and political figures who made Otago New Zealand's leading province in the 1870s.
William and Sibylla lived there above Anderson's Bay at what was then called Sunnyside, in a grand mansion they called Waikomo.
You can see their house as a landmark in these paintings and photos of Anderson's Bay in the 1870s. With all his accomplishments, William would probably be much better known today if he hadn't died unexpectedly in the prime of life in 1875. He was just 42 years old.
A newspaper obituary recounted his long list of contributions to Otago, but most tellingly, it described his personality as of a genial and humorous disposition. He made many friends, but never lost them.